covering news that matters. Fox 23 News at 5:30 starts right now.
Glad you're with us. I'm Nathan Thompson.
And I'm Shay Rozzi. Tonight, an update about a cold case from 1981 when a woman was killed just inside the front door of her midtown Tulsa home. For years, her grandson has fought to find the killer. Fox 23 investigative reporter Janet Clark has this follow-up.
On a Tuesday in October 1981, before the sun went down, someone got away with murder. It happened in this upscale midtown neighborhood near 31st and Utica. A killer brutally attacked a woman at her front door.
Someone went to her home and bludgeoned her to death.
Marshall Johnson says it was his 73-year-old grandmother, Gertrude Blakey. How did you find out your grandmother was killed?
I was told by my foster parents that my grandmother had died. I didn't know what that meant. So I'd asked, when do I get to see her again? And they told me, well, you don't get to ever see her again. And I remember my response. My response was, who's going to come save me?
Marshall says his grandmother was always his safety net. So you must have been very fond of your grandmother.
Yes, very fond.
Gertrude only had one child, an adopted daughter named Anne. Anne married Richard Elder, and together they had 6 kids. Marshall was their 4th. They lived in this red brick home in Midtown. By the time Marshall was 3, DHS took him and his siblings away from Ann and Richard.
When I was put into foster care at 3 years old, I had 93 fist-sized bruises all over my body.
Your mom hit you.
You could call it hitting. I would call it torture.
Marshall didn't find out his grandmother was actually murdered until he was in his 20s. What did you think about that when you found out eventually that your grandma was murdered?
I felt like I needed to do something about it. I had suffered and been through so much at that point that it made me feel like, this is my life's purpose, that I'm here for her.
In 2022, homicide detective Brandon Watkins read through the case file and says Gertrude was supposed to pick up a friend and go to the Performing Arts Center, but she never showed up. This Tulsa Tribune newspaper article says the friend called Gertrude's cousins, who went to her house.
Apparently those cousins asked Gertrude's next-door neighbors for help. I talked to one of them.
I was told that you were one of the folks that found her body.
He didn't want to talk on camera, but says he was only 12 at the time. He and his dad found Gertrude just inside her front door, lying in a pool of blood. They called 911. They figured she must have fallen and hit her head.
So you lived here when Gertrude was killed?
Yes, ma'am.
Mary Dyson Roth still lives on the same street and remembers Gertrude's front door ajar.
I just remember the door being, partially open and that maybe a body or, something there.
The newspaper article says Gertrude's legs were sticking partly outside the open door. An ambulance rushed Gertrude to the hospital. 8 days later, she died. But at first, police didn't know how.
It could be a murder. It could also be an accident. They just weren't sure which one at the time.
That changed when the medical examiner's report came out. It shows Gertrude had lacerations and contusions and fractures on her skull. The cause of death? Injuries due to multiple blunt trauma to the head. The summary says she was struck at least 5 times on the head. It was no accident. It was homicide.
That's when the actual investigation started.
The day after Gertrude died, in this newspaper article, the detective said there was no evidence of forced entry and she had not been robbed.
Whoever showed up to her door that night knew her. That tells me that it wasn't a stranger.
This court record shows Gertrude had been talking to an attorney for 8 months about an upcoming court hearing and about terminating Anne's parental rights. Their last conversation was October 13th, the same day someone attacked Gertrude.
This woman was scared for her life.
I found out Gertrude was scared. She confided in a neighbor that Gertrude had installed a red light on her front porch, and if that light ever came on, to call police. The neighbor said the light never came on. The same neighbor told me the lot across from Gertrude's house was empty and overgrown. She still has this photo of the lot. You can see all the trees and shrubs. The neighbor says the killer could have tossed a metal pipe in the bushes, and that could be the murder weapon.
There was a metal pipe that was turned in, yes.
Braden says 3 weeks after someone attacked Gertrude, a neighbor turned in a 2.5-inch diameter and 3-foot-long metal pipe with duct tape on it.
Why would somebody want to kill a 73-year-old grandmother?
She had a will, and there was a trust that was set up, and it looks like a lot of this is surrounded by money.
So she was just worth a lot of money and somebody wanted it.
Exactly.
Do you think it was just all about money?
Oh, it was all about money.
Did you have legitimate suspects?
Yes. Very early on in the investigation, the same names kept coming up over and over and over, and they were related to the suspect.
Years went by, and police made no arrests.
And it looks like they were fairly close to making an arrest at least at one point.
16 years after Gertrude was killed in 1997, Braden says detectives wanted to charge Gertrude's daughter Ann with the murder, but that didn't happen.
I know who killed my grandmother. My mother and my father murdered my grandmother. They either did it themselves, I believe that my mother did it herself, or paid someone to do it. But I know that they were behind her murder.
Ann had a lengthy criminal history, had even spent time in prison. Richard had actually been a Tulsa police officer until he was kicked off the force in 1975 for getting a DUI and rear-ending a car. The newspapers published articles about it.
We never did figure out who actually did the murder.
Brandon says detectives felt confident both Ann and Richard planned the murder, but didn't actually kill Gertrude. Richard died in 2011, and Ann died a year later.
The belief was that they got a third person to actually do it so that they would have an ironclad alibi as to the whereabouts.
Braden says neighbors saw someone running from the neighborhood the day Gertrude was attacked, but could only give a vague description.
That's the big missing part of this case that has kept people from being arrested.
I told you that in 2022, detectives asked the forensic lab if new technology could detect DNA on any of the evidence.
I have contacted them about the DNA, and they've never responded to me, and I don't believe that they've ever done anything with it. I don't even believe that it was sent off.
I just followed up with the Tulsa police, and Brandon said they're waiting on a new DNA testing machine called an MVAC system. Police plan to use the machine to test evidence in cold cases. The machine can extract genetic material from deep within cracks and crevices. Braden told me that DNA evidence could be the difference in Gertrude's case, and her killer could be arrested at some point.
It's theoretically possible, yeah. I mean, this case has a lot going for it.
Why did you want to talk to me?
I feel like the evidence is being ignored by the Tulsa Police Department.
Marshall was so fed up, he sued the Tulsa police last year. He was trying to get his hands on his grandmother's murder file. But 4 months later, the judge said no, and the case was dismissed.
And I wanted to see who all was involved with her murder and what had happened and why her murder wasn't solved. And I was denied that.
When it comes to your grandmother's case, what do you think should happen?
I want to get Gertrude Blakey's murder solved. It should have been solved a long time ago.
If there was a way that you could talk to her, what would you say?
I'm sorry. I would just tell her I'm sorry. I wish I was there that day. I really do. Because I know that I would have done something to help her.
In Midtown Tulsa, covering news that matters, Jana Clark, Fox 23 News.
Jana will follow up with Tulsa police about the evidence they said they will test. Fox 23 also has a new podcast about cold cases called Frigid. A new episode about this story, Gertrude Blakey's murder, will come out 1 week from today, Tuesday, July 8th.
Do you have a tip or issue that you think Jana Clark should investigate? Let us know. Email FOX23 Investigates at fox23.com or call 918-388-5354 or search Fox 23 Jana Clark on Facebook.